What I'm about to say segues delightfully on from what Vic said and what Dave said, which makes us like a really naff alternative Destiny's Child. And I've got the microphone for it, so I'm really happy about that. Sorry, am I being heckled already? You're Michelle. So my mission in my work life at the moment is to help prepare government for the data revolution. There is one, which is why we're all here at the moment. So I help big government departments with organizational readiness for digital and data revolutions. And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years or so. I've been a public servant for 9 years in total. The last 6 of them I've been doing various head of digital, head of tech, head of gnarly programs that nobody else wants to deliver for big, complex organizations. I'm currently doing that in the biggest operational department of government, which is the Department for Work and Pensions. With me so far? Okay. So this is why I'm talking about human-centered data transformation, because that's my job. I sort of named that as a description of the set of activities that I do to help government be ready for the things that it has to do. What I mean when I say human-centered data transformation is focusing on people in your organization and not on the structure of the organization itself, so avoiding Conway's law. Anything that you know or could know about your users, your staff, or your services. And when I say transformation, I mean doing fundamentally different things from what's gone before. So by focusing on people, you can use data to make your organization fundamentally different from how it looks today. I don't think I need to sell to this crowd the importance of data in the UK nowadays, but just in case I do, this is an Open Data Institute report from last year, which describes data as a critical part of our national infrastructure. That's very important for the domain that I operate in. Things like geospatial data, counterterrorism data, social media data, and things like that are absolutely vital to the running of the country, which means they're vital to the running of government. So we take this stuff very seriously, but effectively it's important for every organisation that's operating in the UK and across the world. To zoom in a little bit on the... Oh, that's terrible kerning. I hope you can read that. And to zoom in a bit on the domain that I operate in, I work for the Department for Work and Pensions, which employs 78,000 people. So if you're somebody in this room is bound to be from John Lewis Group, I would have thought. Hands up if you are. Ah, what a call. So we're about the same size as John Lewis Group, Department for Work and Pensions, if you include Waitrose and all the others. It costs us £6.5 billion a year to run, so we're very expensive. We serve 20 million of the most vulnerable people in society. So the whole of the welfare state we run pensions, and we run child maintenance, so what would have been the child support agency. So troubled families, separated families, and vulnerable kids. So what we do is incredibly important. And in case you didn't know the size of the welfare state, it's about £177 billion. So we are roughly the same in valuation as all the Bitcoin currency in the world, if that helps you to think about how big we are. Big, basically. Within that domain, I'm delighted to say I think I've got the best job in the world. It's to help make this department more effective through the use of data by focusing on the people inside and outside the organisation. What my teams do is, roughly speaking, 3 things. It's amazing how much complexity you can hide in iconography. It's delightful. So what we do is basically we build and run data products and services for internal users, so our own staff, for leads in our organisation, decision makers, and for external customers as well. In doing that, you need a lot of help. An organisation does not miraculously become prepared for a data revolution, as I will describe. So we do a lot of consultation with leaders to help make the whole organisation data literate, data enabled, help teams make data-driven decisions, and help them not to make some of the worst mistakes you can make with data, which I'll also be sharing. And we also build shared components and platforms so we can free access to our own data, so we can free the supply chain so people can get at it, so we can reduce the friction cost of accessing it, and so we can treat it like a commodity that everybody is entitled to, internally at least. You with me so far? Right, so here's how I've gone about doing this for the last couple of years. At no point would I advise trying to solve data in your organisation. If you try and look at it too hard and solve it in a silo, you'll fail. What I've tried to do is solve whole organisational problems. The reason being that this is, I think, fundamentally true to every organisation that's trying to transform. Data is inert. It has no ethical approach. It has no fundamental intelligence to it. It can't make decisions except when you tell it to. It has no judgment. It has no humanity. It has no empathy. it can't solve any of your business problems by itself. Only the people in your organization can do that. And that's why I focus on people when I do data-driven transformation. All right, so let's talk about organizational purpose. If you're on a transformation journey of any type in a big, complex organization, as I am, and have been forever, I think, I always seem to choose masochistic jobs. But anyway, the purpose behind a lot of transformation exercises is relatively similar. You tend to want to save or make money. So if you're in the private sector, you want to make money. We tend to want to economize it or spend it wisely. You're generally looking for operational efficiency. You want to do things well in the quickest time, the cheapest time, most effective way. And often you're looking for improved service delivery to people, either internally or externally. Is this chiming with you? Okay, good. I need validation. Please nod at me when I ask questions. So this was my very simple vision when I became head of data transformation at DWP, which is, by the way, a job title I made up because government doesn't understand how important this is yet. We want to use data to make better decisions, make services more effective, and improve outcomes for people. Right. All of those three basic things we want to do involve a lot of people. It involves some data as a tool, as Dave said, as an enabler, but fundamentally it's the people who make the decisions, it's the people on the receiving end of services, and it's the outcomes in real people's lives that I wanted to focus on. So, if you're a data-first organization, so if you work for Uber, which is, I think they call themselves something like an algorithm company that happens to run cars or something like that, you know, you're a data-focused organization, you won't have the problem that I'm about to describe. But this is my experience of transforming most complex organizations. You start with appalling legacy IT systems. Anybody got an organization with an appalling legacy IT system? At least one? Some of you do. Good, okay. So the data within those systems has not been built for accessibility because it's built out of the analog age, right? You don't miraculously create a data age and not have to deal with any of the crap that's gone behind. So most people have got legacy IT systems with things like scanned paper documents, inaccessible data formats, outsourced IT systems, that quite often happens, or data that just isn't built with the purpose of reuse whatsoever. That gets replicated into badly designed systems, either really bad services for your people internally or your customers externally, or things like appalling CRM systems I've put into this. That leads to and is driven by, in a cycle, defunct process. So when you're trying to transform an organization from an analog age to a digital age to a data-driven age, you always have to deal with a lot of paper. You always have to deal with the humans who've been used to shuffling that paper around and the invested power that comes from doing that. And you often have to deal with the workarounds you get from having bought IT that is not quite right for the job. You with me? That doesn't tend to make people happy in my experience. So I've worked with a lot of organizations where there are a lot of junior people shuffling stuff that they don't really understand the purpose of. There are a lot of unhappy customers who aren't getting the service they need because we're not using data to drive those services. And if you're in a shareholder environment, I wouldn't have thought they'd be best pleased with this either. And in my environment, we have a stakeholder environment. You know, we have boards, and while we're not revenue-driven, we are very much money-driven. And this is all just the beginning state. Now, here's what not to do if you want to create a data revolution. Try and AI your business. I see this all the time. So often, and it's I think one of the areas where big organizations are really vulnerable to snake oil. Here's your organizational structure at the moment. It doesn't work particularly well. We want to make it really modern. Let's put algorithms on top of it. That'll help. I'm very aware that I'm speaking before a panel that's all about AI. I have nothing against AI. It's absolutely fantastic. But here's how not to do it. Trying to automate your existing process or make automated insights off the back of it, or try to blockchain it, which was actually used as a verb to me, is literally just never going to work. And it's a great way to make your people even more unhappy, make your process even worse, and it'll go all the way down. This is not a happy place to be. What you will get is this, a really inefficient business with robots on the top of it. I have never before quoted myself in a slide deck, but this is what I'm saying more and more. These are bad decisions when you make them. If you put artificial intelligence on top of very real stupidity, all you'll get is a very inefficient organization. Right. Have I adequately described the Ansi Pattern here? The Ansi Pattern is basically my day-to-day experience. Instead, this is what we've done in my teams. Start with the humans who interact with your data and are on the receiving end of it. And very, very simplified mapping of the users of DWP data. The further down this matrix you go, the more invisible the transformation is, but the more important, if that makes sense. So the generators of data are often ignored in the data revolution. People like software developers and product teams who code are building new services which create data. In my experience, they're not well trained to make that data accessible, and so the quality of data that's generated within your organization is a bit of a time bomb. That's what I've learned. And I spend a lot of time training product teams how to structure data really well at the point of generation. All of your organizations are generating huge quantities of data every single day, and unless you generate it well in a grown-up manner, you'll never get to the top of this tree well. Next level up, data wranglers. I'm really proud of this cowboy icon, so let's just focus on that for a second. Data scientists and analysts in your organization need great data to work on to build the insights that allow you all to make decisions. So we take those users of our data very, very seriously, and we build things for them. The main audience in this room consists of the second level down decision makers. And they're people from policy teams, operational teams, finance teams, C-suite people, senior executives, make decisions based on that, and they feed on the previous two levels. And finally, the external users of your data who are on the receiving end of your services. In my domain, these are benefit claimants, which are 9 odd million of the most financially and emotionally vulnerable people in our society, who I'm very focused on making sure get the right kind of services. Pensioners who are frequently less financially vulnerable, but no less vulnerable in the round, and separated families. I'm overwhelmingly focused on making sure those people get the stuff they need at the point they need it, and that depends on the next 3 levels down in this diagram. So when I started this journey a couple of years ago, I started by understanding these people really well and what they needed. And to distill it to sort of an absurd level of simplicity, this is what they need from a data-driven organization. The people who build stuff for you need guidance, standards, and access to data and existing systems. That involves things like commercial wrangling if you've got outsourced systems. It involves scrapping some stuff and building some new stuff. It involves mature decisions about what you mothball and what you build afresh. Your data wranglers need modern tooling, platforms, and data. The reason this is distilled to sort of an absurd level is because it's taken me 2 years to do even the basics of some of this in a big complex organization. And at the point you start to do that, you run into what we call the Ministry of No, security-focused thinking. People who are primarily focused on keeping data, hoarding it, dividing it, siloing it, closing it off. And that, for the people in this room, will be one of the biggest cultural challenges, is how you change the mindset around data to be from being something we hoard to being something we liberate. And that is absolutely vital if you're going to enable these people to do their jobs. If they don't do their jobs, you can't do your jobs, because the things that, in my experience, executives need are insights and help, basically. So you need to know how to make great decisions that drive your business in the right direction, and you need some coaching about how to do that. You can't automatically create a cohort of data literate leaders. You need to really take that on as a cultural challenge. You might need some external help, but you'll have a lot of internal wisdom to do that as well. And in the outside world, people who you're serving want simpler, better services. That was my previous incarnation. I could talk for hours about that, but that's basically what they need from you: simplicity and things that are tailored to their need. In doing that, it is vital to fix the infrastructure of your data, and this is a completely naff analogy, but the best one I have to describe how you might go about doing that. Treating data like water involves realizing how vital it is to the running of your organization and how thirsty your organization is for it. I really will make this the most absurdly stretched analogy you can possibly imagine, but it kind of makes sense to me. Data is a vital part of the infrastructure of running your organization, and yet at the moment it will likely be held in blobs that most people can't get at. If you were going to fix a water supply problem as you're trying to fix a data supply problem, you basically do 6 things. You should collect it efficiently in some kind of, I'm not going to say data lake, because that's specifically not what I'm asking you to do. You need to collect it in a way that is accessible, built for reuse, built to user needs, and in a way that is cheap compared to the job you're trying to do. You then need to... Ollie, my microphone's fallen off. Is that affecting the noise at all? Can you still all hear me? Cool. All right, fine. Store it safely. So you do need to keep data very safe. Data security is not something to be trivialized, but you need to balance the hoarding mentality with the openness mentality in such a way that you can actually use your own data. Then, like with any supply, you need to clean it. One of the biggest problems that I've seen about making data-driven insights in a large organization is the appalling quality of data. And so investing time and money and people in making it clean and usable is incredibly important. Now, at that point, you need infrastructure so that people can actually access it. And these, to me, look like things like APIs, so interfaces to your own data. These are the kind of tasks which are frequently ignored in big organizations, but are absolutely make or break if you want to be data-driven. So taking things like APIs at the top of existing systems very seriously is important. It's easy to ignore because it's really hard, but very important. And then you need to build services, thank you, that allow people to use it. And that is where digital and technology skills come into play, which I'll talk about in a minute. Only at that point will you even be able to start using data effectively. So, once you fix the plumbing, this is something which for some reason people don't talk about a lot when they're talking about data-driven organizations. They seem to talk about data, which I think is not the right place to start. One of the most frequent blockers I've seen of a data-driven revolution in any organization is they haven't got people who can do it. And I think the marketplace is quite tight for it. This is a very simple sort of distillation of my experience of doing this, is that of the people involved in data teams, about 3/4 of them tend to be externally sourced when you first start, and only about 1/4 of the people internal. And then it's vital for people like you to take on that skills transition actively in your organization, so you don't over-rely on suppliers and contractors for too long, and you take on the leap that you're actually trying to do. If you ignore that people side of it, again, you're going to be roboting a bad process, or you'll be attempting to drive insights, but the skills won't change at all. As well as supplying from externally, I'd say take on skills transition really seriously. And these are just some examples of where I've found it possible to take existing skill sets in my organization and transfer them to modern data skill sets. So tasks like project management, analysis, design, development can all be transitioned to a data-rich environment, but they must be transitioned actively so people get the additional skills they need and understand the difference between the jobs they're doing now and the jobs they need to do in the future. And then I would always advise people to work in the intersections between multiple skill sets. These are the disciplines that I've been working in for the last 6 years. Coming into a data... thank you. Hello. Exciting. Why didn't nobody tell me? So coming into a data function in a big organisation, I found that the data people were often off in a corner, and all the cool digital people were in a different corner, being cool and service-driven. And the technology people are on a different floor and nobody really spoke to them. That is not going to get this done. I think the sweet spot is the black spot in the middle, where you've got an intersectional skill set that recognises the importance of all of those things. So you absolutely need to bring service designers and user experience specialists and researchers into any data-focused team. You do absolutely need to leverage commodity tech, which is cheaper, better, and faster than the technology that's gone before, and to build a culture of continuous delivery into that. And you really need the data skills which help you to use all of that stuff in a way that's wise. Keeping those people all separate from each other will massively limit your ability to transform. But it goes a long way beyond that. If you're going to do human-focused data transformation, you need to do proper multidisciplinary working, and that involves taking all of those skill sets out of various dusty corners of your organization and sitting them with service teams in a completely holistic way. So I would never have a data team that didn't have customer service people sitting in it, because the wisdom that you derive from pure data cannot be easily interpreted without those people in the room. Equally, policy and strategy people, legal people, sometimes it depends on the kind of decisions you're making. But if you lose any of these skill sets, again, you're going to make unwise decisions, even if your data is the best it can possibly be. And I think the next thing to do is to focus on outcomes. So let's talk about anti-patterns. On the left of this is the current Starship Enterprise of most people's data-driven decision-making in an organization. It involves a lot of people sitting around board meetings, poring over exhaustive slide decks sometimes, spreadsheets other times. It really doesn't make a difference. We're transitioning towards the right-hand side of this. So these are public service performance dashboards. What these do is distill the key drivers of your organization into smaller metrics that are more easily digestible. And that is good, and it's sort of where we've got to so far, and it certainly goes against the kind of blind data greed that will make your organization less able to make good decisions. But what we really need to get to is this. Begin with users. I've spoken about that. Understand what outcomes they're trying to reach, both your internal users of data, you yourselves as decision makers, and your customers on the outside. And then crucially, measure the things which most accurately correlate to those outcomes. Don't measure everything in the world. If you do, you'll never be able to make good decisions. But use mature analysis and modern data techniques to understand how your outcomes are driven by metrics. Very, very few metrics, and then focus on them ruthlessly. That will mean that you can start to derive insights from them. And at this point, you start to get into big leadership territory, because when your insights start to disagree with your gut instinct, I think, Dave, you said this, that's the point where you have to be truly data-driven. One of the biggest cultural blockers that I see of data-driven transformation is very important senior people who say, well, I get paid to make decisions based on my gut instinct. Well, the data disagrees with me. What are you going to do? And at that point, you have to take a leap as your organization to say, well, this is the evidence, this is what it's telling us. It's not what our instinct says, but I think this is correct. And at that point, that's when it really starts to stick. But if you can break through that and be evidence-driven, you can start to improve your organization, and you can start to intervene in defunct process, in badly designed systems, in redundant parts of your service delivery, in things you don't need to do anymore. After that, then you can start with the robots. Then you can get into predictive analytics. I would put things like automation in here. I would put things, well, any of the modern technologies that can help you automate any part of your business process should only come in once you've learned how to do the previous 5 steps. How much time have I got left? Oh, I can see that clock. Wonderful. Okay, we're timing this okay. This is a very high-fluting way to say, if you're going to lead one of these functions, I think this is how you do it well. When I give any of these talks about leadership in data-rich environments, I would almost always say humility, curiosity, and teachability are the 3 big leadership attributes you need, and they're indistinguishable from cultural values from my point of view. So start with those. A frequent anti-pattern, again, to how you do this, looks like this. We are very important and senior people in a very big organization. We should have a strategy. So people often write a data strategy to do data strategy really well. And then we need to control the data. So we'll take our strategy and we'll build an architecture. This is where data warehouse thinking comes in. Let's control it and make it really consistent and uniform. From that, you start to build programs of work. Let's do some things. And they dial into projects. Let's build some things. This is going to be really exciting. And at that point, somebody's on the receiving end of those projects, and they frequently fail, partly because people haven't done ground-up data re-engineering, and partly because of this. It's completely untested. You don't know whether your strategy is going to work because you haven't delivered anything to a real person who's on the receiving end of anything yet. So I would advise not doing that if you're going to lead this kind of transformation with integrity. What I would advise is doing this. Start with people. Deliver something to them that you hope makes sense, and then iterate it based on their feedback. That could be an insight product. It could be a platform for your data scientists. It could be a service to an external user. Once you've done, I think, 3 of them, you've learnt enough, and you'll have failed hard enough, and you'll have gained enough humility to build on top of it. And you can build some platforms that people can use and some architectural patterns which will help to build the guide rails for this kind of transformation. That took me about a year to begin. And I'm on year 2, and I'm just writing the data strategy for the DWP based on things that I know, based on many things that I know not to do. That, I think, is probably a good way forward. Another consideration for leaders, which I would always say, is not to treat ethics, the law, and security as the same thing. I hear that a lot. Ethics says, we could do this, but should we? which is a very important thought, particularly for revenue-generating organisations who could do a lot of things which could be argued to be unethical. Legal things, is this breaking the law? And that's not just GDPR. You can approach the limits of GDPR without breaking the law, but again, should you? It's an intersectional question. And security-wise, is there a risk of data loss or breach? Taking those questions as 3 separate ones enables you as leaders to take the decisions that lead to the right outcomes. If you attempt to take an ethical-based decision based purely on the law, you won't fully appreciate the ethical position you need to take. If you try to make security decisions based entirely on the law or entirely on ethics, again, you won't consider it in the round. Okay, we are just wrapping up. This is top tips. In summary, start with people. Attempt to solve whole organizational problems. Focus on the skills you need. Chase the outcomes, don't chase technology. And lead with integrity. I think we've got 3 minutes for questions looking at this clock. 3 minutes and 46 seconds for questions. Thank you very much.